So I wanted to talk about the EOS R-5 and our experience with this camera over the last 2 3 weeks, closer to 3 weeks now. Um, this camera is all it was made out to be. I mean, there's no reason, or there's lots of reason why this is the number one selling camera in Japan right now. And it's not just hype. This camera works, and it all depends. I mean, any camera depends on your workflow. I've used Lumix cameras in the past. I've sold them or given them back to my work because they didn't work for me in my workflow and what I needed to do. Great video cameras, not a full scale, not lots of, not full, they're not full frame, and they're basically not great photo cameras. Which doesn't fit my workflow because I am focused on uh, basically growth for small businesses and organizations that require um, wonderful content on a budget, and a lot of that content is stills. I mean, stills are still the key to social. They're still what's going to sell as thumbnails. They're still going to sell your video. So the engagement is there with stills, and we do a lot of stills work. Um, but just talking about this camera, there's a couple of key things, key parts about it. Number one is the photo parts. So let's talk about those first, and the what makes this the best camera for me, and that's the key. The best camera for you. Is it the best camera for everybody? I don't know. But for a hybrid shooter like me, I'm not 100% video. If I was 100% video, I'd be using a C200, which I do at work. I use a C100 or a C200 sometimes, and blend it in with footage from the EOS R, which I'm actually shooting this on or live streaming on. And we do use a Lumix there as well, a GH5 as a camera just for a sign language feed, which is separate. But overall, what this camera does for me and my workflow, well, let's talk about it. I mean, photos, you can't beat the autofocus on this camera, whether it's animals or kids, sports, you name it. I was looking for a camera. I was looking at used 70 Mark IIs because I wanted something that did a high frame rate shooting for stills, and I didn't have it in my arsenal. I have 5D Mark II that I'm still hanging on to. Didn't do it. The M50 didn't do it. The EOS R didn't do it. So the R5 covers that base. And then the low light capability of this camera is phenomenal as well, to the point where I'm not going to throw it into super high ISOs. Honestly, any camera, I try to keep it to a reasonable amount of lighting, whether it's natural lighting, which I love, or studio lighting, lights that we bring along. So the low light on this camera is phenomenal, and easy to lift the shadows, which is great when you're shooting photos. And then that 45 megapixel detail, or 45.1 megapixel detail, that's incredible as well. And a lot of people don't think about that, but that's a huge part of the capabilities of this camera. And that's something that as a user, you need to look at as well. And then it is so blazing fast. I mean, the ability for this to not just focus, but to capture focus in a dark room or low light, dusk, is amazing. The other day I was shooting some photos of my daughter's party, and young lad running through a basketball court, a chain link fence, shooting through the chain link fence. He was coming towards me, and it was a good 10, 15 meters away, maybe 20 meters away, that I was actually able to get that high focus on him, or it was hitting perfect focus, and made some decent captures, some really good captures of that. So great photo capability, which is so important to me, working with some of the clients that I have, smaller businesses. That is critical. We do a lot of Instagram stuff. We do a lot of Facebook posts. Even if they're just thumbnails for videos on YouTube, I need to capture something with great, incredible bokeh with a nice lens. May have to do it in the pouring rain in my West Coast weather here, and on the Pacific Northwest where it's raining 2/3 of the year. This camera can do it, which is incredible. And then moving on to videos. I was shooting a 75th birthday party for my parents this past week, and got some beautiful footage shooting 4K 24 and 4K 60. Outside, it was 34 degrees Celsius here on that day, which is blazing hot. We were outside in the backyard, in and out of the sun. We're sitting in the shade at times too, but it was hot. The ambient temperature was hot, well over 30 degrees Celsius. And it was, the camera never overheated, first of all. And it was my typical workflow. And I left the camera on. I was shooting some stills, mostly shot video actually. And there was some slow motion of a fish pond, some fish darting around in there. And again, for slow motion, 4K 60 is more than enough for natural, regular motions. A person sitting and talking in 4K 60 will look good and very smooth and cool. And you can tell it's slow motion. It's from on my typical 24p timeline, which I always shoot. 60 frames a second is about a 60% reduction in speed. So you're getting less than half speed. You're going to notice it. Too slow. 120 is too slow for that. I mean, a person's going to be so slow it would look odd. And it just doesn't look natural. So yeah, the 120 is for fast motion, dogs sprinting, horses galloping, things like that. I would use 120 or even 240, but and just short bursts of that. For people just walking, strolling along, even a jog or something, I think the 60 frames per second is ideal. You got to pick a frame rate based on the action. And if you're shooting fast action, sure, go to 120. I typically don't shoot fast action. I don't shoot action sports. I don't shoot, those types of things that require the fast action. People walking, strolling, entering a building, dancing, that I do shoot. And that 60 frames has always been sort of the sweet spot. And that's why that's all I've needed in the past. And I continue to look at that. So the video did exactly what I needed it to do. I was outside for about 3-4 hours, shooting intermittently, randomly shots of video throughout. Bright sunny day, it was 34 degrees Celsius. Like I mentioned, the camera never overheated, got lots of stills, got lots of photos, in general, but video clips in 4K, full 4, not cropped, but 4K 24. And it just told me a lot about, yes, this fits my my workflow. My typical shots, my typical video shoots are narrative. It's interviews, half hour, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. And we usually reduce it down to a 2 to 3 minute clip or less than 5 minute clip. I'm not shooting weddings, but I think this camera would be great for weddings. I'm not shooting, and I would use it crop framed actually, to be honest, in 4K 60 in a crop with an external recorder. But when I shoot on that narrative stuff, I am basically shooting in short bursts. And if I shoot narrative or interview stuff, it's a standard 1080p 24 frames per second, now 4K 24 frames per second. Again, it won't be an issue for me. The overheating will never rear its head. And I think Canon's also working on some upgrades that will, like an update for the firmware that'll actually change that. So I'm not too worried about that at all. So it's about fitting, and this vlog has always been about that. What fits your workflow? What works for you? I've always been talking about this camera right here. And this is the EOS M50. It's a great little camera. And I still carry it with me all over the place. It's something that I love to just slip in a jacket pocket and a coat pocket. I use it for vlogging because I don't want to lug around something big and heavy like this. I mean, I can do it. It's still reasonably light, but the M50 is so elegant and small and is perfect for the walkie-talkie type of vlog. or just I've had it in my golf bag at a golf tournament and just pull it out to get some shots on the greens. It's simple and easy to use. It's great, and that's why they're so popular. And what is it? Probably, I think it's the best-selling um, removable lens camera, interchangeable lens camera ILC in the world, definitely in Japan. And there's a reason for that. It's just so elegant. So the M50, and we'll talk about it, and I'll be doing a video about the M50 and how I use it. But I think it's a great content creator camera, and I still think it's the best value out there. Speaking of value, the R5 gives me value. My 5D Mark II gave me 10 years of value already, earning me money all that time. So that price tag on that, and I talked about in another video about the cost of the 5D Mark II, it was a little bit less than the equivalent in those days dollars to what the R5 is now. The R5 was a bit more, but it packs in a whole lot more as well. And that value, if it's going to give me 8 to 10 years, 7 to 10 years of use, that's value. And so that's what matters. And we'll share some of the video, clips I'm working on this week to edit, and some of the photos out of the R5. But I tell you, this camera is a workhorse, and it is going to be used for work. It's going to be something that I'm going to use day in and day out. It's going to carry the load for me for photography, along with my R as my second camera. It works seamlessly with the video cameras that I use as well professionally at work. The C100, the C200. So overall, it is what I imagined it would be. There was no letdown at all in any sense. I don't know anybody anywhere that shoots more than a few minutes, a few seconds of 8K footage. I've yet to have more than 2 clients in the last 7 years ask me for 4K footage. And 4K has been around that long, but people aren't asking for it. And again, we talked about the disservice in a past video. We talked about the disservice you do to clients trying to sell them on something which you're inevitably going to charge more for, because that's what people around here do anyway. So you want 4K? Yes, we're going to need this gear, and this is the cost. What we're delivering it as. I think that's a disservice to a small business that's trying to make it, especially in today's environment, to tell them that we're going to charge them more for a product that they don't need. So realistically, I would take my M50, I would take my EOS R, I would take the R5 as well, but I would shoot in a lower frame rate or a lower, lower quality. I would use the term quality, but yeah, you use 1080 and produce something that they're going to inevitably put on Instagram or Facebook, and nobody's ever going to notice the difference. You're just not. Side by side, sure, if you put a 4K or an 8K clip beside a 1080 clip, you'll notice the difference. If you're using blends of those qualities within a video that's been then downgraded to exported at 1080p, so they can upload it to YouTube and have it very effective on YouTube or Facebook or wherever they want it, you're not going to be able to tell. There's going to be certain parts of the sequence. You might do your slow motion, your 120 slow motion in 1080, and your slower narrative stuff in 4K 24 or 4K 60. So I think that it's really about being sensible, and we know that the camera wars are such an interesting thing, and there are a lot of people that have vested interests, whether it's whatever side of the equation you may be on, and Canon or Sony or you name it. And so that has an impact on how people react to these things and how they talk about it. There's a lot of people on the internet being paid, a lot of people on YouTube being paid by manufacturers to promote products. They're also earning money on those products through their affiliate links through Amazon or what have you. And so you got to take it with a grain of salt. You need to test these things out. I will say that. You need to test and see if it fits your use case. Rent the cameras, rent the bodies. For me, as a Canon shooter, I've shot with Nikons, I've shot with Canons. I started out with the 1967 Canon FX, which is right up there on the shelf, my father's camera. I still use it for black and white film. Love that camera. I learned to shoot on it when I was 7, 8 years old. Um, but I've shot with the original HP digital cameras, Sony's. I've shot Sony camcorders for I don't know how long, and then Canon from like the film Rebels to the digital Rebel XTs to the was it the 40D, 70D, 5D Mark II, like just right up to, and the R and the M cameras with a bunch of lenses now, as well as my for my portable kit. And so I've used all those, but I've also used multiple Lumix cameras. And again, like I mentioned, I got rid of those. I've shot with Nikon cameras and Fuji. I have a Fuji X100F sitting right up there, and so I kind of I do like gear, and I have acquired a little bit, but I use it all. And for me, the reliability and efficiency of Canon, the ability to get spare parts anywhere in the world. I mean, we talked about in the past video, a village in Nepal, you could get batteries or whatever you might need. Canon professional services. I will talk about this here. The CPS membership. Having the CPS membership has been huge for me in the ability to trial new stuff before it came out, getting immediate service. The only issue I've ever had with a Canon product was a lens, and it was a focus ring. It was an M series lens. It wasn't working quite right. I actually sent it back and got it repaired. But I've had the ability to get things first or ahead of time with CPS. I think if you're a Canon owner and doing any sort of pro work, you should have a CPS membership. But and that's something for another video. But they stand behind the product. It's a great product, and I think as a user that needs to take this body out into the driving rain. I've had it in the downtown east side of Vancouver in pouring rain. Not this one, but the 5D Mark II and the R. Shooting photos at events. I'm not worried because they're weather sealed. The L lenses are weather sealed, and the R fits all of my old L lenses, and that's another thing. And I've been using them for the last couple of weeks. I've been using all my L lenses, my 24-70 2.8, my 70-200 2.8, 50 millimeter f 1.4, 85 1.8. These lenses all work. The autofocus works even better. Having that full sensor autofocus from edge to edge and all those focus points is unbelievable. And so I'm actually hitting a lot more shots as well, especially in drive mode. And so I'm really loving it. And so for a content creator, this is ideal. Now, there are some caveats. For me, I always have multiple cameras with me. So maybe that's my word. And I don't know anybody who would take on a professional gig, a paid gig, with just one camera. I always bring a spare. Even if I'm only using one, I don't want my one camera to have a problem and suddenly I've got nothing. So I always make sure I have two cameras. I like to shoot multiple angles when I shoot something, even narrative style, interviews, that type of thing. So I'm always shooting with two. When I do photos, I'm always shooting with two cameras. Again, there's always a chance of failure. And if you have multiple cameras, you can switch those around and get them going. So that's, in a nutshell, multiple reasons why I do what I do. And I want your comments below. I want you to let me know what your thoughts are, and give us a like, give us a share, subscribe. And until next time, we'll catch you on the B side.